Hi, how's it going? I'm Malachi, CEO, engineer of Elite Automation. Maybe one of these days there'll be a different guy doing these videos and you won't have to look at my face, but I'm sorry, today you got to deal with it. Today, what we're going to be doing is going over some recipes. Essentially, we're just going to have a discussion about recipes, kind of show you some logic that can be utilized for recipes and some different data structures and things along those lines. And this really just opened up a conversation about recipes and some of the different things needed to create a recipe because there's a lot of things involved with creating a recipe. You have the PLC logic, you have UDTs, you have naming conventions. There's a bunch of different topics that kind of go into creating a recipe, and you need at least like probably 3 different skill sets or 3 different know-hows to be able to really create a good recipe. Don't get me wrong, you can create generic recipes and do stuff like just use nothing but dents and things along those lines. And then there's also some complexities in recipes that can make it hard to do certain things that you may want to do within a recipe. So we're going to go ahead and just jump into the software, start talking about some different things that are going on. So here we are in Studio 5000. Here I have some PLC logic that I've written for this recipe code. And so I think the first thing that we should start off with is breaking down the different tag names that we have created and kind of what's going on with each individual thing. So right here we have a recipe, and then you can see a brackets array.num. Okay, so recipe is our recipe tag name / we also have a recipe UDT as well. So let's go ahead and go into our controller tags real quick and let's look at that recipe. So in our controller tags, let's go ahead and shrink this back down a little bit. So in our controller tags, we have our recipe tag name, but then we also have a data type called recipe as well. So as you can see here, we've created this thing with an array of 50. Now you need your array number to be how many ever part numbers you're going to have. I just threw in this arbitrary 50 for this particular video. We could have got away with 10. You may have an application that has 100 different part numbers. So that's going to be kind of specific to your application. I mean, almost all of this is going to be specific to your application. That's why this is kind of just a general conversation, because I'm not going to be able to create a recipe for you without knowing your exact application. So we're going to go ahead and break this open a little bit. So you can see the arrays here. You don't really see much special here unless you break it down one layer further. Okay, so now we are in this next layer. And you can see that we have this recipe 0 dot and then part number, if it's left-handed, if it's right-handed, some timers. Notice these timers are in an array as well. And then you have color, which is of the data type color. And then we have part number, which is a string. Or this one's actually part name. So we have part name, and this one here is actually a string. So that way, if you have like a part number that has letters within it, you're able to store that string information, or you're able to store that data, and you need a string to be able to store anything with the letter character in it. And just notice I kind of threw a mix of different data types in here as well. So we have dents, we have booleans, we have timer, color, which is another UDT, we have string. And so the whole purpose of us throwing in these different data types was just kind of utilize them as examples and kind of show you how you can have different layers within a recipe or within a UDT. And this may not even be the most practical way of doing it. Like I probably wouldn't put left hand and right hand as a boolean on this first layer of data type structures. But like I said, I just put them there for example's sake. While we're still here, I want to point out a few more things. Notice how this is a dent right here for part number. Now, this doesn't necessarily need to be broken down any further because we're just utilizing this to store a number value. So there's really nothing within this that we necessarily need. It's just your standard dent, nothing special. But whenever you come down here to color, we can expand that, and we're going to have more data inside of there. So we have recipe 0, dot color, dot black. Then we have dot white, dot red, dot blue, dot green. Now this makes it very easy whenever it comes to doing your programming. When you're writing logic, you can just type in this dot, whatever this color is going to be, and kind of speed up your programming process and not have to keep bouncing back and forth to your controller tags, back to your logic again, back and forth. So let's go ahead and go back over into our main program. On this first rung here, you see that we're using this array number, and we'll get to that here in a second. and then we're using this recipe 0. So what's going on here in this rung is essentially we're loading our stored value into our running value, or should I say tag. So our running value is our recipe 0, our running tag is our recipe 0. So all of our logic is going to rest around that recipe 0. And so in our logic, we'll have recipe 0 dot black, or recipe 0 dot, left hand. And so that'll be the tag that we are utilizing throughout our logic. All the other array locations of a recipe 0, or of recipe I should say, is going to be a stored value. So essentially all they are is like a save as. And then we just need to be able to take that save as value and load it into our current running value. And the way we go about accessing the different saves is by doing something called indirect addressing. So with this indirect addressing, which is right here, array.number, so I created a UDT, I called it array, and within that array I have one called .number, and you can see right here it's a dent data type. So I just basically am storing a value inside of that. And for this particular application that we're doing for this video's purpose, we used a lot of UDT stuff that we may not have actually used in real life, but we did it for the sake of just showing you UDTs and how they work and how they can be advantageous. I felt like it was a really good idea to kind of show some practice and potential practical uses of it. We're going to go ahead and come down a little bit further to this third rung of logic here, and you'll notice we have array.number. And what we're doing is we are doing an add function, so we're just adding 1 to array.number and then putting it back into itself. As you can see here, here's where we used array again. So this is array.add. So this logic is all kind of tied together. You have your array.number, which stores the value. Your array.add is your Boolean bit that triggers the add function. You have array.sub, which triggers your subtraction function. And then we have these one-shots here because if you do an add function and you toggle that bit, it will add 1 for every scan of the PLC. So you want to make sure that this fires on a one-shot and only fires 1 time. If not, the number will shoot up so quick that you'll never be able to stop it on a particular number. So just to kind of show you guys it working, if we just add 1, notice our one-shot fires, and it just adds 1. Turn it off, add 1. Same thing as subtract. We're just going to subtract 1. Alright, so the reason why that faulted is we just had the array number in the wrong spot. And this is something to keep in mind and you have to be very careful of. Whenever you're doing array indexing or indirect addressing, you have to ensure that you never go outside of how many ever arrays that you have. So if your array, for example, this one's set to 50, if you ever go outside of that 50, it will major fault your controller and shut the whole entire processor down. So you got to make sure that you put stuff in place. Now, this particular video, we didn't put anything in place. If you want us to go further into like how to build recipes out, we'll build more of that structure and show you how to limit some of that stuff. But essentially what you would do is you say if it goes above a certain value, you write it to a smaller value. So if it goes above 50, write it to a 50. If it goes below 0, write it to a 0. And those metrics will stop your PLC from going into that fatal state and crashing. You may have to put a buffer between these numbers here too, by the way. So we're going to turn off load right now and kind of just show you this working. So we're going to go ahead and add, where are we at? Array number 5 right now. So I'm going to go ahead and come down because I only have values in like the first couple. And so here we are at array number 3. As you can see, our part name, there's nothing here. All right, let me take a step back. So for these two blocks right here, essentially the only thing we're doing is using these as a place to examine what's going on in the background. So this just gives us some visual representation of what's occurring. Right here is our recipe 0.part name. We're using this concatenate block. It's essentially not doing nothing. I just have a blank here and then a blank string, and then we're using it to set it to a destination. Like I said, purely for visual representation purposes. And then same thing, so we're looking at .part number here, and then we're shoving this to a HMI value. So now that we have our array set to 3, essentially what's going on is this recipe array number right here is saying recipe array 3. And that's what indirect addressing does. So anytime I'm changing this value here, if I went down, now this is essentially recipe 2. Now it's recipe 1. So whatever's in the array.num value is what is up in this value right here. So let's go ahead and turn that one off. We're going to add some more to it again, get us back to 3. Okay, so now that we're here at the 3, we're going to load the part in storage location 3 into our running recipe value. So our recipe array 0. And obviously this is going to be stored with an HMI. It's going to have a human interface behind it. So this array add and this array subtract will be HMI buttons to go up and down in like some type of menuing system. And then you're going to have like a string value that's displaying on your menuing system. And you'll be able to visually see the name of each part number or just part number. Kind of depending. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes it'll display you have a part number next to it. It's all about what you want as a customer, or as what you want to put, what your customer wants, or what a controls engineer wants to put in there. What seems like makes the most sense for the particular application. But so you're hitting your add and your subtract, and then you're coming to the part number that you want to see. And so let's say, for instance, we are at our part number 3. And then, realistically, you would have the name of the part displaying right now. Let's just go ahead and do that real quick and do that live. I think that'd be a good representation of how to do this. So I'm going to just add a branch around here. And then I'm going to basically steal this concatenate right here. Paste it right there. And so we're going to actually take this array number. And it's going to be dot part name. Okay, so our part name, and then we're gonna do a blank with it as well, and then it's not gonna allow us to use this same one. They'll overwrite, so we'll just add a 1 in there. We're just gonna create a new tag, make sure it's a string, create. I'm just trying to move fast. I'm not necessarily trying to be super proper about the way we're going about doing things. I should approve this, and it should automatically display the current value of the save location. So it's not displaying it right here, but if you can see, it says van001. So that's the name of this particular part number. So if we go ahead, where are we at now? We're at array 3. I don't think 4 I have anything stored, so whenever I go to the next one, it should go to blank, and it did. So it went to blank. So let's go ahead and go back down. It should say van again. Okay. Let's go back down one more time. I think this next one is truck. So truck 001. And if we go down one more time, I believe we're at car 001. So you can see that right there. It keeps on updating. Now, if you notice, we are not getting any update on our part name right here. So we have not loaded the saved value into our running recipe values. So what we have to do is we essentially have to go up here, and let's go back to our 3 because we've talked about that one a couple times. Okay, so we're back at 3. We're at van001. Now what we need to do is we need to load this, which this is acting as like a confirm. You're saying, like, are you sure you want to do that? And if you want to add extra layers or even password protect this, so that way only certain people can load in different programs, especially on the save as. Save is actually a very good one to have password protected, because you don't want anybody overriding your recipe values. And we'll even do stuff where we will have a whole entire array of data that essentially gets stored ever so often. So we'll literally copy the whole entire save as arrays. So array 1 through 50. We'll copy that array 1 through 50 to a generic one that essentially never gets touched. It only gets updated at a particular instance in time. And the reasoning for doing that is you're doing a backup of your backups. So it's like the equivalent of having like an auto save as in a program. And the whole purpose of that is if somebody overwrites everything, customer calls us and says, oh, we've lost everything. Like, some operator overwrote every part and didn't know what they was doing. And we can say, okay, that's fine. We actually keep a backup of that. that maybe we store it once a week or once a month. So we're gonna go ahead and load this part real quick. And whenever we load this part, it's gonna take the value from array number and it's gonna shove it into our array number 0. So array number 3 is gonna get shoved into array 0. And there you go. Now you can see our van has updated with a 001. Van 001 is the current model number that we're running right now. I'm gonna go ahead and scroll down here a little bit. I created a few rungs of logic to kind of demonstrate how we have our colors, how we're activating some other thing within the process. So maybe it's paint buckets. Maybe you're using like multiple colors. If we're using one of these colors, you want this paint bucket to be activated. Or if you're activating one of these colors, you use a different paint bucket to be activated. Or, you know, if you're using this one, only this one gets activated. I think you all kind of understand what is going on here with this, you know, simplistic logic. But the main thing I want to demonstrate is how it changes as you're going through different recipes. One thing that you can do is you can come through here and you can write that. Now that you've written that, you can do a save now, and what it'll do is it'll write what's in recipe 0 right here, and it'll write it into whatever array number you're sitting at. So we could do like we just did there, and given this would all be HMI based, and maybe we'll go into a deeper detailed video where we do have an HMI and we're kind of correlating all this stuff together. Now I think it could be very useful. I don't even know if there's anything on YouTube on going about creating recipes and going that deep into it. So this whole recipe thing could be like a whole 5 video series or something like that. But I'd like to get some people's questions and comments down below. That way we can kind of really target what people are wanting to know and whatnot. And also keeping these videos as quick and concise as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do a save as. So we're going to just activate this part.save bit. And we are going to shove that recipe 0 into recipe array, and then whatever our array number is right here. So our array number is a 3. Do our save as. And now we just shoved this new value we created into the recipe. There's also some logic that we'll go into at some point in time. That's kind of what this logic is here, but there's more that goes into it, and actually doing a indicator to do a save as is actually a somewhat complex process, because with Allen Bradley, they don't give you the ability really to compare a bunch of different data types together. So like if you have a UDT of data, you kind of have to go do some like little behind the scenes type of comparison to make that accomplishable. So it's quite a bit of not necessarily quite a bit of logic, but you have to get kind of tricky with it, or just to do something as simple as indicating that you need to do a save as. So I believe we saved it. I'm going to save it one more again just to ensure that we've saved it. Okay, now let's go ahead and change our value. Let's go ahead and go up to a 4. Notice there's nothing in here. When we load this, it should load nothing into here. Okay, let's come down here. Notice everything's off because there's no value stored in that location. Now we're going to go ahead and go back to the 3 again. So we're at our array 3. Oh, it auto-loaded it because I forgot to turn the load off. But notice how van is automatically populated back in there again. I'm going to turn that off. And so the bit that we turned on and then that we saved is now saved in that recipe. So anytime you have a bit or a tag created in your controller tags, but you're not utilizing it in logic, you can set that bit and you can unset that bit the same way you do with like a latch and an unlatch, as long as you're not actually utilizing that bit as an output in your logic. And you know, the way of going about that is just having some other data type do like a copy to that bit directly. I think one last thing that I want to demonstrate is the saving the recipe into a new value that has nothing in it. So let's say, for instance, you're going to create a new part number, right? We're currently at 4 right now, right? But we are still running our current recipe value. Number 4, remember, it has nothing in it. But what we want to do is we know that this part number that's coming up is identical to the one we're running now. It's very similar. Maybe the color's different on it or something, right? So what we can do is we can do a part save. Now the save location that we are currently at has been updated to what the current recipe values are. So this gives us a good starting point for starting out on the next part. And then let's say, for instance, on this one, maybe it's just white and it's not red. So now we need to go up here, and then we do a save. And now whenever we switch between part 3 and part 4, we are going to get a basically a color difference. And everything else within this recipe is going to remain the same. So we're currently at white. We're switching it to 3. And now we're going to go ahead and load 3. Now notice white and red are running. Maybe we want just red to run for this particular part. So now we can turn off that white, and we can do a save. Undo our save. And then now when we switch between our 3 and our 4 storage location, this white and this red will update. So hopefully this was kind of useful and kind of gave you an idea of how a recipe is created and how the data is shifted between them. Like I said, this is just kind of to open up some conversation and get some people down in the comments below and kind of let us know what you'd like to see. In particular, is there, hey, recipe array, whatever. We're going to have this program stored so we can reference back to this, so that way we can address any questions that you want to know. Because it may be something as simple as, you want to know this array.number and us to go deeper into that, or maybe you want us to go deeper into UDTs. We do have a UDT video, and there are other UDT videos out there, but we're really trying to target the recipe. We're trying to target videos that are just not out there yet and really help people be able to find like solutions and ways of going about doing things that are not currently on the market, or they're not concise enough. Like, say for instance, this particular topic that we talked about today is in another video, but it's embedded into a bunch of other stuff within another video. So this makes this video potentially more searchable and more likely for you to see it. And if you're seeing it, maybe you've seen it by search, maybe you've seen it on LinkedIn, but hey, you've seen it. So thank you guys for viewing. If you want us to come in and like set up any recipe stuff for you and your company, or want to go over any type of training for doing recipes type of stuff, business card will be at the end of this video. Check it out, reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to help. We specialize in robotic cells, mirror technologies, wireless technologies, but we're here just to kind of bring value with this YouTube channel and overall get people up to speed and grow the whole entire automation industry. Catch you all in the next one.